Yo, what is going on, everyone? I'm back with another review video. It is going to be on my LuceOut EndShape mouse. This is a 3D printed mouse from LuceOut. I will also have their Twitter in the description as well, just so that it's easier to find them. It is honestly way better than I had actually expected. I've heard nothing but horror stories from 3D printed mice, but this was actually a very nice experience. Thank you so much for sending it out for review, and let me just get into the clicks. Just talking about the main clicks first off, they are using KO 8.0s, and they feel really good. I honestly thought that the plastic, at least from the 3D printed material, would feel a lot less tactile than other pieces of plastic. I don't really know if that makes any sense, but I just thought that it wouldn't feel very good. But these are better than a lot of companies' implementation of KO 8.0s. It's honestly very impressive, and I'm glad that they actually did them well. I know that a lot of companies, for some reason, seem to just really shit the bed with KO 8.0 implementation, but I can confirm that these feel really, really nice. The other thing too with the main clicks and side clicks is they are all adjustable. It comes with like a little screwdriver that you can adjust it to your liking, although I've just left it completely like default, so whatever it came with, and it feels really good. I'm actually not too sure the side buttons that they are using, but thankfully, because this is such a thick plastic, it actually feels really, really good. If it was like hollow and like lighter, I think these would feel terrible, but they are very nicely protruded as well. Oh, that's a way better angle. So you can see that they are protruded immensely, and then they're also not the exact same size of the side buttons as the Endgame Gear XM1 are, so it's actually positioned a little bit better, and then they're also very thick and make it very easy to hit as well. The next thing I want to talk about are these mouse gates. So they're using CorePad dots. I have been a fan of CorePads in the past, but I've never used their dots, and I think that these are honestly just fine, mainly because it doesn't really matter what type of feet you're going to be using, because this mice is so light, coming in at 37 grams, which is absolutely insane. So I think no matter what pad or what mouse feet you're using, in all honesty, this is going to feel like a very easy to start moving mouse. Initial friction is always going to feel very light. Same thing with dynamic. Stopping power might be a little bit more difficult if you're not used to extremely low weight mice, much like I was when I first got my final mouse Starlight 12. It took a little bit to get used to that super lightweight. And I feel like if you're used to an Endgame Gear mouse and that's the only thing you're using, this is also going to be a small adjustment period. Speaking of the weight, the balancing is honestly very front heavy. If you can see, if I pick it up here, it's pretty evenly balanced, but because of where I rest my fingers, they're back here. So it does tend to be a little bit front heavy if I'm not gripping it tightly enough, or if I'm not squeezing my palm muscles to grip the mouse. So it is a little bit front heavy, but I think it's just because this is the only part that is solid on the mouse itself. These main clicks all up here, you can see that everywhere else has holes, so it does feel a little bit weird, but I'm actually really glad that these are solid, because I think it would feel terrible like pressing into holes like this. Another thing is build quality, and I'm sure that build quality is going to be a huge concern for a lot of people. The top you can obviously press into, but I think in Boards' video he said that the sides, they have actually reinforced it, which I can confirm feels very good. I don't think I could really grip this mouse so tightly that I would actually be able to press in. I'm still able to kind of press into the shell, but I have to push very hard. But on the top, I'm not too sure if anyone is actually putting that much palm pressure on the mouse to be able to do this. It is just kind of fun to do, but the main thing is you're not going to actually be pressing into the mouse, and there's going to be no flex while using it. And that was probably the biggest concern for me when first inquiring about getting a review unit sent out, mainly because I've never used a 3D printed mouse, so this would be a very good start. And then the other thing was overall build quality. I can confirm that since I've had this from December 9th-ish, so for a whole month, it is not degraded in any way. Clicks still feel fantastic. Same thing with side buttons. Scroll wheel is honestly really nice too. The other thing too is build quality and performance has also stayed incredible. The next thing I want to quickly skim over is the battery life, because typically in my wireless mouse review videos, I typically do tend to forget. So I haven't changed the LEDs at all. I haven't changed the RGB on this mouse at all, and it lasts really long. I think it's lasted me about 5 days of very heavy use, and it's honestly, for how bright these things are too, at night when I have all my lights turned off, this actually like illuminates my room. You can even see that the colors are kind of coming over here on my pad, and it's just incredibly bright. I'm not too sure if you can change it in the software. because these internals are using a M800 Pro, so you do have to use the deluxe software, which honestly isn't that bad. I'm just glad that there is a software at all. I am always one to really care about how long my battery life has lasted. And then another thing too is being able to just adjust things to my liking. LOD is the first thing. That was like the main reason I actually asked if there was a software, because it comes in default at 2 millimeters, and then it also comes in default at 12 milliseconds debounce. So those are just things that I prefer to have in a software. That's usually why I don't ever complain about software. As long as I can use it and change certain settings, then I don't mind having it on my computer whatsoever. The next thing is the scroll wheel. The scroll wheel feels amazing. I genuinely really like the scroll wheel. It is super protruded, you can see over here. The steps are super defined as well. And then these grooves are really, really grippy and really nice. The other thing I want to talk about too is how this mouse feels in hand. And it's really difficult to put into words what this kind of 3D printed material feels like, because there is no coating, but I do actually really like how the sides feel here. I don't really notice a whole lot on my palm area. It doesn't really feel like anything, but the sides feel very nice. The other thing too is it is quite slippery. You can see that there's like no grippage anywhere. So because I'm thankfully got an Endgame Gear-esque shape, I'm able to just pull the mouse into my palm and get a very comfortable, stable grip because of how big the back flare is. So it just pulls and just fits right into my palm. And then the last thing is obviously going to be the shape. So with a 1-to-1 comparison with the shape, you can see that it is incredibly similar. The biggest differences is going to be obviously the weight, and then the next thing would also be the side buttons. You can see that the side buttons do not protrude whatsoever on the shell on the Endgame Gear XM1. And then the other thing too is they're not spaced very well. You can see that on the XM1 that the mouse buttons do not protrude nearly as much as the LuceOut version does. So I think that's definitely a big plus, especially if you use the side buttons. The other thing too is the LuceOut buttons are also very similar in size, as opposed to the back button being so huge and the front being so small on the XM1. And the main reason I decided to choose the Endgame Gear-esque shape as opposed to the Super Light or the G305 or even like their Final Mouse shape is mainly because there are options for these mice. The main thing with those mice in particular, I just feel like there are very easy alternatives to find that are very similar in weight and size. Just overall, you're able to find those kinds of mice elsewhere. The main thing is they're not going to be as light, and they're also going to feel a little bit more premium because this is a 3D printed mouse. And I do think that it does add a little bit of cheaper feeling, even though it is very expensive. So I think the biggest thing is you want to try a mouse that at least doesn't have a whole lot of alternatives. I know that Endgame Gear just announced that they're going to have their XM2W mouse that I'm actually going to be very happily paying for. So I'm going to be getting that. But the main thing is I'm not able to try certain mice like their S2 or their Viper Mini shape. I think those would be amazing mice to try out, mainly because there's no real good alternatives for those two mice in particular, especially for the shape. But yeah, that is pretty much all for my video. I just wanted to just make it really quick, make it a lot more to the point, as opposed to just eating up a whole lot of dead time. But the next mouse I will be reviewing is actually the Paratrack Valor. This is a crazy good mouse. I actually like it more than the G Pro. The only real difference is that this mouse feels way more dense than a Superlight does, even though it is like the same weight range. But this mouse, to me, at the very least, is probably your best alternative to a GPX. But yeah, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next upload. Peace.